Hello there, Commonwealth from here. The Switch might be succeeded by a similar sounding system, keeping Nintendo and Switch and adding something before or after the current name. A Nintendo tradition since the early 90s when we went from the Famicom to Super Famicom / the Nintendo Entertainment System (NES) to Super Nintendo Entertainment System (SNES). It is just that keeping the name for around 2, as from this point been a handheld one, except the Wii U failed. But the Switch is different. So hear me out. We could be about to make the switch from the Nintendo Switch to the Super Nintendo Switch, if not Nintendo Switch 2. A smaller, but at the same time significant change or evolution that is the by far most logical next generation solution for Nintendo. So be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press the notification bell, and in this case, for all notifications. Just think about it. You have the most defining and recognizable system and a super easy recipe to replicate said success by doing what? Improving the visuals and sound, the controller experience, and adding more color or themes to it all to secure more games. And you know what? The Super Famicom / Super Nintendo did just that. It added so much more that the NES didn't offer, but it mainly came down to 3 things: visuals, sound, and controller. And yes, I'm talking about the Super Famicom and European Super Nintendo, since America had this button color layout. In return, their system design was cooler. Anyway, what are the current rumblings about the Switch 2? Better visuals for DLSS upscaling and stronger hardware, potentially better sound to upgrade the undocked experience, and colored button layout as already speculated around the Super Mario RPG and Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door remakes. A distinctive difference between the Switch and the next system that we have used in thumbnails for months now to make it clear that this is different. This is new and very exciting, avoiding the Wii U trap, or if you prefer, confusion. A smooth transition with a simple message. Play with even more power. Superpower. That is some real marketing brainpower at play. E3 2016 Breath of the Wild and NX hype meme hits aside, there's a lot of truth to it. Not counting the transition from the Game Boy Advance to the DS, GameCube to the Wii, and Wii U to Switch, which lesser, both system and name change, was the most successful in Nintendo's history. The transition from the Famicom / NES to Super Famicom SNES would take success and build on it, or improve the already balanced experience rather than throwing it away, all while avoiding the convoluted mess of the Wii U from both a marketing and physical setup. So what made the Super Nintendo the best follow-up in Nintendo's history for so many? More of everything. Graphics, dimensions, colors, sound, buttons, and most of all, games. This is where we find the most timeless titles that have aged like the finest wine. Super Mario World, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, Super Metroid, the Donkey Kong Country trilogy, Mother / Earthbound, Mega Man X, Chrono Trigger, and Final Fantasy VI. The list goes on and on. The SNES was magical and the definition of how to do a video game console sequel when facing stiff system competition. The exact recipe for the Switch successor to follow. What we love from the Switch, but taking it even further beyond. No one questions the brilliance and timeless status of Nintendo's 16-bit and first 480p system. The system specs required for the console war against Sega Genesis, which Nintendo won with what? Better graphics, sound, controller, and more games. That is not my conclusion. It is James Rolfe's, and not as the angry video game nerd, but his own personal opinion as seen in these 2 videos from over 10 years ago. Nintendo built an incredible relationship at that time with the Japanese partners, including Sony, who provided the amazing sound chip. Nintendo also bought Rareware and created wonders on a system that was never replicated until the Switch. Still, the outgoing system is missing one thing the SNES had: the majority of new third-party games, from Square Enix, Capcom, From Software, Rockstar, CD Projekt Red, Larian, and so on. With Nvidia DLSS upscaled 4K, Nintendo might finally return to the age where they are not the omitted system when it comes to the launch of the biggest games not developed by themselves or closest partners. Imagine the next Final Fantasy on the same day as on PlayStation, Monster Hunter Wilds as well, Witcher 4, the successor to Elden Ring, and so on. This right here is what the Switch is missing, despite all kinds of records. Its lack of power prevents general AAA third-party support, and definitely on day one. Equality on this field with PlayStation and Xbox will absolutely destroy the competition around the world, and even surpass the SNES. Why? Portability, or if you prefer, on-docked play. What if you could take Final Fantasy VII Rebirth from your TV in upscale 4K and then bring it with you in HD and continue the hunt of the Sephiroth on the go, all while avoiding the massive downgrade in graphics which the Switcher went through in order to function and fit with all DLC on a single 32GB cartridge. With the Nintendo Switch 2 or Super Nintendo Switch, you might be able to do just that. And what is more, if Nintendo's finally taken online seriously, open a whole new world of online games, removing the strongest edge of both the PlayStation and Xbox in one swoop, and taking a far bigger market share outside of Japan, just like they did with the Switch in Japan this generation. With the same games as on other systems launching on the same day, and portability included within say $400, it is literally game over for PlayStation. As the Super Switch will in this scenario dominate markets like Europe and North America to an even greater degree than the Nintendo Switch was able to in the last 7 years. Japan will be all Super Switch. PS5 sales will plummet. It is the final step that Nintendo can make to take the ultimate crown that will last not just a generation, but generations, as the competition will either have to adapt to the hybrid or see Nintendo return to the dominance of the 80s, or at least the first half of the 90s. So near total, the era of the Famicom/NES and the Super of both, when Nintendo literally ruled the world, and now they're on the verge of potentially doing it again while calling back the last time they were in this position. Super Nintendo Entertainment System. All they need to deliver is power. Superpower to make the Nintendo Switch the most successful and appealing console of all time. As system that will make us look at Nintendo Switch as a right step towards the big leap that was the Super Nintendo Switch. Nintendo's first 4K system, well upscaled, and with it all the games imaginable to back it. Where when you see a third-party game revealed, you bet your ass it is launching the same day and date on the Super Nintendo Switch. This, plus better action buttons, analog triggers, bigger analog sticks, and the classic D-pad will secure worldwide dominance and make the Super Switch the console with nearly all the non-exclusive PlayStation and Xbox titles, plus Nintendo's timeless exclusives. Ultimate video game console, despite not being native 4K, but upscaled, and that is what a successor to the Nintendo Switch deserves to be. A sequel that is better than the original and without any drawbacks. This system, unlike the Switch, will have a brand new Mario Kart, likely titled X, for being the 10th installment since the series debut on, you guessed it, the Super Famicom/SNES in 1992. That is already super, along with a brand new Zelda game that isn't just Zelda Wii U brought over or the sequel to said game. A new era, built on successful hardware, but made even better. The path to control and success, and all the games you could ever desire right in front of us in the palm of our hands. So back here in the Kokona Hammock Salon, run by fellow game fans, like all of us, I want to say the following. I want to experience the return of Super Nintendo. You see, I was born in June 1992 and was too young, much like in the case of the 1994 Winter Olympics in Norway, to experience the live glory days of the SNES. You know, a Nintendo system where close to every non-exclusive game you could imagine being released came to the Super. A return of the Super Nintendo, but this time in the form of Super Nintendo Switch, with so much more that the 90s didn't offer. One of them could be dual-screen play without the need of a second on-docked built-in display. Endo brought up a really cool Switch 2 concept with its colored D-pad and power-boosting dock concept, But I really want us to soak in the first half of the 90s nostalgia with this video. Most of all, the potential of that era. The Super Nintendo Switch, the SNES, the first worthy successor to the SNES. And there you have it, while I'm getting supered by a Japanese expert. Back to the early 90s, the peak Nintendo in every regard, which aged gracefully and returned with a vengeance in the 2020s. But what do you think? Are we about to go back to the past, while going back to the future, and is the Nintendo Switch successor not the Switch 2, but rather the Super Nintendo Switch, perhaps even Nintendo Power? Sound off in the comment section down below. If you want the next Super Nintendo or Super Nintendo Switch, then be sure to superpower through that like, subscribe and notification bell buttons with all notifications on, as I am so ready to cover what I hope will become the spiritual descendant of the Super Nintendo, not only the successor of the Nintendo Switch. Thank you so much for watching, and last but definitely not least, thank you to all of our patreon.com/ComeAround patrons. Special shoutouts go to our producers Zach Johnson and JC Funk, and heroes Holly Wolf, Cheryl, Garrett Hoy, and Jeffrey Van Triest. You rock, and please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.